Well, this has certainly been one of the biggest stories of the last few weeks, and we've watched this gut-wrenching testimony, and the jury has watched right along with all of us of the George Yeardley murder trial. Deliberations for that jury begin tomorrow. Now, just a refresher, this is the former UVA lacrosse player accused of fatally beating his ex-girlfriend Yeardley Love. Was it first-degree murder, manslaughter, a tragic accident? This is what the jurors are facing, and we're going to talk more about this. Chip Merlin is a trial attorney. Joseph Dibenedetto is a criminal defense attorney, and they both join us now. So, Chip, something came up in the closing arguments that really caught our attention, and this happened on Saturday. The lead attorney for the prosecution, while showing these pictures yet again of Yeardley Love's body and the bruises on it, chokes up, gets very emotional while he's talking to the jury. And by the way, during this case, one of the jury members actually had to leave because they too felt too affected emotionally by what was happening during the trial. Is this a strategy by the prosecution? I mean, you're the trial attorney. Would you say this is the way to go, to start crying during your closing arguments if you are the one giving that closing argument?
It can be a double-edged sword because if jurors perceive that they're being played as a result of the prosecutor trying to reach into somebody else's emotions, and prosecutors do this for a living, it could absolutely backfire, and the defense, could in this particular case have gained by the crying that goes on. This was a very emotional case. The defendant cried. The aunt of Ms. Love, she was crying throughout it. One of the jurors had to leave. So it's not the type of thing that a judge is going to look at and think, boy, this is something that might be feigned by the prosecutor. It really might have happened exactly that way. Well,
and so, Joe, this is what the defense attorney did in response to that, having watched what happened here in the closing argument. The defense attorney said this to the jury: your job is to go back and cry about this and then wipe away tears and deliberate. Now, this defense has gotten some criticism by the way that they've behaved in the courtroom, from statements like that to also one of the defense team members getting sick and not showing up for trial for 1.5 days. Do you think they played this right?
Absolutely. I think it's crucial for a jury to put aside their emotions. What they should be focusing on are the facts of this case. That's what will determine whether or not this individual is guilty. You have to set aside the emotions and focus on everything here shows reckless conduct. It is an impossibility to prove first-degree murder. That's exactly what this defense attorney told them during his summation, and I applaud him for, even though he's taking the lumps now in the press, but it was an important point for him to make. Yes, this is an emotional case, but you must look at the facts of the case.
Well, Joe, some people look at those facts in different ways. Would you have put George Yeardley back on the stand? Because he did not take the stand here, and they do have a police video of him confessing that they haven't submitted that confession, obviously, because he's on trial right now. But would you have George take the stand to really explain exactly what happened that night? Do you think that was a mistake? I
don't think so. I think at this point, I think the defense played their cards right. It's not necessary to expose this defendant to an unpleasant cross-examination. What we have to remember is, to a certain degree, this is a circumstantial case. The only thing that we're left with is that there are two people in the room that night, the deceased and the defendant. And there's enough facts between medical testimony, the videotape statement. There are enough facts for the defense to get their position out there. And I think that they have, and I think that first-degree murder will not happen in this case.
Chip, your thoughts on this as well, because the video in question really shows George Yeardley describing what happened to Yeardley Love. He talks about shaking her a little bit, wrestling her to the ground. He talks about tossing her on the bed, leaving her bleeding and, quote, flopping like a fish out of water. The jury's going to be able to watch this video again and again if they want. He says he left her alive, and the police tell him that she's dead. He starts crying. She's not dead. She's not dead. There's no way that she's dead. So in that statement, he proved Joe's point there.
Well, a lot of guilty people are remorseful after the fact, and that statement within the video that she freaked out and started hitting her head against the wall, I wouldn't have put him up on the stand either. He is a violent person. He was choking her way before this happened, sent an email threatening, "I should have killed you," bashed his foot through the door, then goes in and does the act, steals the laptop that's got these incriminating emails, erases them, and throws them in there. He acted just like a guilty person. The defense did the right thing by not calling him up there, because that type of passionate person, if that violence comes back out, could have damned him.
Real quick final thought here, Joe. Just how long do you think it's going to take for the jury to rule on this?
Well, I think if they can separate the emotions from this case and really focus on the facts, I think the top count was a stretch. It was overcharged by the prosecution. I think they should be able to do away with that count very, very quickly. You know, figuring out the finer points as to what counts there will be a guilty verdict on, I think that will take some time. Probably by the end of the week, there should be a decision.
Yeah, it's interesting to see, await some resolution here for all parties involved. Chip and Joe.